You are listening to the Two and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the Two and Out CFL podcast.
He's got it! Oh, baby!
Every week, Travis Currah.
That's Grey Cup me, which is a different person.
And Brazilian Tide.
Hunters are people too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Oh, nearly intercepted, and it's over!
Ready, set, hunt!
Thanks for pressing play on this episode of Two and Out. It's Travis Currah, Sheldon Jones getting you ready for Week 7. We're both coming off, each of us, attending some AEW wrestling, but I'm interested in the work you put in at Taco Bell in Saskatoon, man. You guys went to work. What's your item of choice at the old Taco Bell?
Yeah, two of us is like $54.
That's incredible.
I got a couple of I think they're called the chalupas. They're like the taco with the cheese layer of the cheese sauce, and then the I don't know, pita bread or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Delicious. I had a couple of those, and what else?
I'm all about the chili cheese burritos. I'm a simple guy. Get about 4
I
of
was
those.
looking at that. I was looking at that, but I didn't go for it. Matt, he got two of he thought he was getting two of the small burritos, but they charged him for the like regular ones or the large, so that's why it was so expensive, I guess. But and then of course you got to have that Baja Blast. Love it.
All right, Taco Bell.
One of Regina in November.
November? Okay.
Yeah. So,
a fast food delicacy. Not good.
It's good that it's in the south end, way far away from
Week 7 in the CFL. We got a lot to live up to from Week 6 and some pretty wide point spreads here. So I don't know if we're going to live up to Week 6, but I guess the ratings for Week 6 were pretty darn good too. The second highest rated game of the week was actually Hamilton at Edmonton. And it was one of the best rated regular season weeks in quite some time. So people are talking, even if they're talking about world records being set in Edmonton. Thankfully, they are not in Edmonton this time around, but is it much better going to Winnipeg, where the Bombers are 14.5-point favorites over the Edmonton Elks? I don't think Edmonton's going to win, but they have a shot at covering that. Like, that is pretty crazy, man.
It is crazy, but I think Edmonton is the last team that wants to play Winnipeg on a week after they lost to Ottawa. And Zach, he's never lost 2 games in a row as a regular season. Stole that from the notes there. You're welcome. Yeah, so no, I think that the Eskimos will cover, but I would not be surprised if they did. So they could be down by halftime. That who knows?
They could. Winnipeg beat Saskatchewan by 18, and then Winnipeg lost by 24. They beat Montreal by 14. They ended up beating Calgary by 13. And then they lost to Ottawa. So, and they're coming off a short week. Look, anything's possible after that Ottawa win over the Bombers here. But look, the Elks, they lost by 8 to Hamilton. They lost by 1 to Saskatchewan, and they lost by 19 to Ottawa. So clearly Ottawa are the new team to look out for in the CFL. But you're right, Zach Collaros has not lost back-to-back regular season games as a Blue Bomber, and he gets another weapon to the arsenal this week as Kenny the King Lawler is set to make his season debut. So the Bomber offense gets that added boost. We saw how they started off early in the year, high flying, nobody could really stop them, but maybe Ottawa put out the formula on how to beat the Bombers. They limited Brady Oliveira to basically nothing. And the Bombers had no other answers once they couldn't run the ball. Look, easier said than done for Edmonton to do that because Jamin Pelly on the defensive lines on the 6-game injured list, and their starting middle linebacker, Niles Morgan, is on the 6-game injured list too. So Edmonton stopping the run is going to be a tall task, Sheldon.
Definitely will. And again, Oliveira is going to be upset that he didn't get any yards against Ottawa. But also Ottawa's defense, I think, is a lot better than Edmonton's defense right
Yeah.
now. They've been defense has not been Ottawa's problem this season. But the good thing for Winnipeg is having Lawler back. I don't necessarily think Lawler is going to be have a huge game stats wise. He's going to have some rust. He's probably been under a lot of stress with this whole working visa issue that he's been having, but he is going to take away that double team from like Dalton Schoen or Nick Dembski and get those boys open. So it's going to be a very tough night for that Chris Jones led Elk defense.
Yeah, and I think what we see with those Elks is like they'll kind of keep teams under control. They'll keep them limited and then just get smashed with a big play. And we know the Bombers have big play ability. They'll run, and then all of a sudden 83 down the field or whoever is down the field scoring a long touchdown. And actually the Elks lead the league in giving up big plays. They've given up 18 of them this season. Ottawa is in second with 14. Winnipeg has given up 13 big plays. And look, Taylor Cornelius is starting, and they might be in a lot of passing situations. If we're talking fantasy, maybe they're going to be passing the ball 45 times just to try to keep up with Winnipeg. Although I see this kind of being the game where maybe Winnipeg is going to have several 6-minute drives, so Edmonton's not going to really have that much time with the ball. But hey, they've started to look Kyron Moore's way. He had a 100-yard game, and Winnipeg teams have passed on them. A little bit of the stuff in the secondary. They have given up some big plays here and there. I think the key is Cornelius is going to have to do what somehow he does against Saskatchewan. Run. He seems to be the Riders' Achilles heel. I know they lost last time out, but they have a tough time getting a handle on him. And maybe if he could stay unpredictable and run the ball, that might be the key to kind of keeping up with the Bombers here.
That's true. And Crum was able to run over them a little bit. But Adam Bighill's not gonna whiff on that many tackles. So,
fueled by anger, it could help or hinder you, right?
Yeah, no, but exactly. It's like the perfect storm of everything that would have upset the Bombers in the last game is the things that Edmonton would have to do well to actually be in this game. So it's a very interesting David versus Goliath type match here, but we're starting to see that Winnipeg is not that Goliath anymore. They're being a little more human.
Now, I think Solomon Elimimian might be the last defensive player to win MOP. Could it happen again in 2023? I think, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, maybe Chad Kelly gets the nod out of the East. Maybe. But out of the West, I mean, Matthew Betts has 9 sacks in 5 games. Willie Jefferson is tied for the league lead in pass knockdowns. He's 12th all time, actually, in that category. Now, it's only a stat they've been tracking since 1994, but still, a D lineman to be up there in that category is phenomenal. And he seems to be playing, I guess, to take a Michael Cole reference, vintage Willie Jefferson style football so far.
Yeah, like when you said, or when I was reading that on the sheet there, I wasn't shocked because I remember the amount of times he did it when he was here in Riderville, and then how many times he's done it against us playing for the Bombers. So, and then you add a few more in other times. He's his wingspan, like he's just unreal. It's like Michael Jordan in Space Jam when he's going to dunk. That's what it must feel like for the CFL quarterbacks going against Willie J out there. So I I would not be surprised in the least. I'm not sure if you have it in front of you, but whatever the final or the record is, but I would not be surprised for Willie to break that. But it's done.
Yeah, he might. Now, he's actually only 2 away, I think, from tying Davis Sanchez in his career for pass knockdowns. So could it happen this week? It could. Taylor Cornelius has that challenge ahead of him this week, but we'll see what that leash is like. Is he going to have a bad quarter and then they put Daggy in or what have you? Chris Jones basically challenging Trey Ford to play better football this week. If you want to get in, be better. But he also said it's kind of hard if you don't have a good camp as a quarterback. It's hard to kind of move up that depth chart during the season. At least that's what he has said. Kind of challenging Trey Ford a little bit. I know fans across the league want to see the Canadian out there and getting that shot, because at 0-6, what do the Elks have to lose besides another game?
Well, that's exactly it. Like, if you say that you need to see him play better, well, you're 0-6 and your starting quarterback is not playing well. So why don't you see if he can play better? Like, practice is not everything. We've heard of players who aren't great practicers, but play awesome in games. So you can't. I know quarterback, you need to be solid in practice, but sometimes you just gotta see what they can do when the lights are on and the stress is active, right?
Some defensive changes for the Bombers as global defender Les Maruo will start at weak side linebacker in place of Malik Clements, who is now on the 6th game with a hip issue. And Canadian defensive back Rita Cramdy will start at strong side linebacker after returning from a hip injury that held him out for the last 3 games. I mean, we spent 5 minutes talking about a game that has a 14.5-point spread at the moment, but as we saw last weekend, no game's ever over, and everybody's got a chance in the Canadian Football League, man. You gotta play the game, no matter what, right?
Yeah, no one's walking away when there's 3 minutes left when you're watching the NFC Championship game. Like, it's CFL is down to the last second. Love it.
You know, as somebody that was crushing $5 beers at Mosaic Stadium and Tevin Jones scores the big touchdown. the roller coaster of emotions that you feel at a CFL game. We'll talk Riders right away here. First, the Argos are 7.5-point favorites over the Hamilton Tiger Cats as they look to move to 5-0 for the first time since 1960. The Argos have only been 5-0 once in the modern CFL. This is how different this Toronto team is, and they've actually won 7 of their last 8 games with the Ticats. I don't know. Have you been paying attention much to this PFF grading system in the CFL? I mean, as far as the power rankings go and things like that, it seems to be just sort of right now a conversation starter. It's pro football focus. They use the grading in the NCAA and the NFL a lot, and a lot of people look at it as almost the football gospel, but kind of a flawed system, at least so far when it comes to grading stuff happening in the Canadian Football League, Sheldon.
Well, yeah, like they have, like Montreal's O-line is the top graded one for some reason. They've let how many sacks? Like Cody's
Mario
on
Alford
pace
wasn't
for
on the
90.
list last week.
Yeah. How does the Calgary returner, who wouldn't even had as many yards as Mario? There's no way. And Mario gets 2 touchdowns, and he's not the special teams performer. Give me a break. But again, maybe they just want to piss us off and get us talking. Like
Maybe
that's why there's no stats, is because they know that we just keep bitching about it all the time. And
well, I guess it's working in the television ratings because people are like, I can't get stats online. I got to watch the game.
Yeah, I won't be able to see how many touchdowns Taylor Cornelius has thrown, so I have to watch the game.
Shut down the website. only time you could get CFL information is watching it on TV. Although, I mean,
do what you got to do, I guess.
a lot of the other stuff here. James Butler was the second graded player last week. He had a great game. Chad Kelly was number 1. Hey, look, he had a great game too. Other than the bad interception, he was 21 to 25. His 300-yard game, 3 passing touchdowns. That makes sense. David Ungerer was up there. James Vaughters, Micah Alway of the Stampeders up there. Rene Paredes up there. That Kobe Williams of the Stamps on the special teams. That, you're right, quite interesting. But here's where we stand right now. Chad Kelly is the number 1 graded player through the entire year. He's got the highest score of 93.4 after his performance last week. I was a Chad Kelly doubter, man. I was. So
yep, me too.
I think by now he's probably won me over.
It's good that we're wrong, because there's a lot of people who were kind of upset with Naylor's little prediction there that he's the most important player in the league. But if he can continue to perform like this, he will be the most important player in the league, and he'll get the fans south of the border.
Well, and with lots of those quarterback injuries so far this year. Oh, hey. Hey, Tammy, what's going on?
Okay.
She's on the show.
She's on the show.
They got to keep him healthy, though, right? With all the quarterback injuries we've seen this year, and the last few years, keeping Chad Kelly healthy is what a priority for the Argos, obviously, to say the least.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, but again, if he continues to perform well, nothing but good things for the league.
Yeah, and the thing is, this is another one of those games, man. The Ticats, look, they're at home, they were able to get a couple wins here over the past few weeks, so good for them. Matthew Schiltz, though, now he's on the 6-game injured list. They bring in Antonio Pipkin, and Taylor Powell is going to get the start against Toronto because Bo Levi Mitchell not quite ready to go for the Ticats. So Powell gets his first career start against an Argonaut defense that is not always easy to figure out. And they're hard on quarterbacks, they're hard on running backs, but if the Cats can't get James Butler going, they've been kind of inconsistent with that this year. He's been having good games and kind of off games. But with Taylor Powell making that first start, we saw him. He had a nice touchdown pass against Edmonton. They need to have James Butler having another good game here.
Yeah, it's a lot of people rag on Tommy Condell for his offensive play calling, but you got to give him a little slack when he's making the play or making a package for the 4th quarterback of the year here.
Yeah.
So you have to give him a little benefit of the doubt there. But yeah, again, it's pretty much in the CFL, you need to have the run game to establish the pass game, to establish play action. So it's imperative, especially when you're the weaker team and you need to win that battle of the trenches. That's 90% of winning a game when you're the underdog, right? So hopefully for Hamilton fans, it's been a long year. We know what your year was like last year here in Ryderville with a team that is underperforming in the Grey Cup year. So hopefully they can turn it around, because the East is still wide open.
Yeah, it is.
But it needs to start sooner than later, obviously.
Tyler Turnowski looks like he's going to miss this game with an ankle injury, the Canadian receiver there. And maybe they're going to start getting some guys back off the 6-game injured list in the near future here. Dylan Wynn has been out with the knee injury. He's been practicing this week. So if he gets back sooner rather than later. He'll be a big addition to that defensive line in Hamilton. But right now, it just looks like you got to limit your mistakes, because the Argos absolutely crush teams that make those mistakes. And the way that AJ Oled is playing, he right now he seems like a madman that just can't be stopped. He gets rolling and you can't stop him. And the touchdowns he has been scoring as well. He's on a wild pace himself right now. We talk about big plays. Edmonton leading the league in that category, giving them up. Well, Hamilton is tied for second with Ottawa at 14. And Toronto is actually had 10 big plays themselves. And we saw last week Chad Kelly, the guy, no effort, and at least it looks like no effort. 57-yard plays down the field. Hamilton can't let that happen. And look, they're in tough. Although Tunde Adeleke practicing in full this week after missing last week, that should be a big addition to that back end for the Tiger Cats. But limiting those mistakes against the Argos, it's going to be a tall task for the Ticats at Tim Hortons Field. BC Lions, home to the Saskatchewan Roughriders. And speaking of another big point spread, the Lions are 10-point favorites. But Sheldon, I didn't realize this. Saskatchewan has won 5 straight games at BC Place. But BC coming off the bye. Teams are 6-1 off the bye in 2023. And Mason Fine is set to make his 3rd career start for the Riders. How you feeling about this game Saturday in Vancouver?
Very low expectations, so that you can't. So like, it's tough. We saw what he could do in those 2 games last season, but I don't know if we can really, it's fair to judge him off those games, because the Riders were already out of the playoffs, and it was kind of, I'm not going to say he wasn't trying his hardest or the team wasn't trying their hardest, but it's hard to be motivated right at that point. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic that Jeffries can get a game plan for him. It's a very tall task going against that BC defensive line with Betts. So they need to have him quite. The good thing is he's mobile, right? Trevor Harris wasn't as mobile as the other mobile quarterbacks are, but he had to run a little bit here, and he hurt himself having to do that this last game. But his one good positive was that he could get the ball out of there quickly.
Yeah.
It seemed in the past couple of games he was holding on to it a little bit longer, but so they need to get the ball out of Mason Fine's hands extremely quickly, and they need to move the pocket around. They need to misdirection option plays, maybe have Patterson come in and do some of his stuff. Not sure, but it's a tough task. But there shouldn't be that many that high expectations on him. So hopefully, just go in there and compete and execute.
Talked about that Matthew Betts having 9 sacks in 5 games so far this year. The Canadian sack record is 17. That was set back in 2005 by BC Lion great Brent Johnson. Matthew Betts, of course, is on a pace where he could have like 30 sacks, which I don't think he's going to get to that point, but he does have an opportunity to maybe pad those sack numbers even further this week. The Riders gave up 7 sacks last week against Calgary, and you even saw them getting beat up down the middle by the defensive tackles. Even when the guards are struggling, limiting pressure on the quarterback from the tackles, your offensive line is in deep trouble, and we're starting to see that again from the Riders, even though they had sort of a better start to the season. But once some of the veterans started getting hurt, and they're still dealing with injuries now, the offensive line is getting exposed again, much like they were last year.
Yeah, like, I don't know how Evan Johnson still has a job on this team. I hate to say, like, he's a nice guy, but like he yeah, he's a pylon would be more effective. I honestly think right now, like it's ridiculous.
He seems
But
to be
the
almost
Riders
public
have,
enemy #1 for the Riders fans
well,
anyway.
yeah, and it's like last year with Natai Rogers, and it took like what was it, like 10 games before they realized and they moved on. Like I get that Johnson's Canadian. I get that, and I
Local
don't know.
guy.
Like it's
Yeah.
yeah, he's a local. Yeah, he's a good kid, and we have some young good kids on the line, but we're throwing them to the fire here, and
Yeah.
it's not working for some of them. Like I saw that Clifton was back practicing this week, so
Hmm.
that's good. That hopefully he can get back in there. Godber's still probably a week or two away, fortunately, but I don't think Bandy's been doing too terrible job at center. Like there hasn't been
Nope.
any
Nope.
errant snaps or fumbles or anything like that, so that we're good there, I'd say. But it's gonna be more than a test going up against BC's defensive line here. And
Yeah. Uh, and they're coming off a bye, so that doesn't bode all that well. Peter Godber hasn't practiced this week for the Riders on the offensive line, dealing with a hand injury. But also Anthony Lanier on the defensive line dealing with a hand injury, and Roland Milligan, or sorry, Lanier was a foot injury. Roland Milligan has injury problems right now as well. So, hey, Micah Johnson missed practice, non-football related, but some injury issues creeping up for the Riders. And they'll tell you, not an excuse, next man up, but if you don't have the depth, it makes a difference, man.
it sure feels like we should be able to use it as an excuse. But Milligan is like the biggest injury I would say on the whole team, to be
Yeah.
honest, because he was lights out last season, and if Milligan's back there last game against Calgary, there's no way Bagleton is open as often as he was. Like
Hmm.
again, Clark, he's another guy. Like it's pretty obvious why he was a healthy scratch, because man, he had a pretty brutal game back there. But we need to get Milligan back. We need like we have Schaefer Baker, we have Winicky, we have Walker, we have Lenius who started practicing. So
Yep.
he's able to come off the 6th game next week. So hopefully he's good to go. But receiver really hasn't been an issue. Where they're gonna have to make some tough decisions when it comes to receiver, because Tevin Jones has been playing well, Emulus has been playing well, Picton playing well.
They don't want to
You
move
might
Sean
be
Bain, probably.
no, yeah, like Sean
Kendall
Bain. I
Watson
need to
making
see more
plays.
from him. Yeah, yeah, but I need to see more from Sean Bain. Like
Yep.
and I'm not saying it's him. They need to involve him more. They need to get him on those swing passes, but not just. They need to be more creative with him. They need to insert Mario Alfred into the offense. Like they have all these weapons that now is the time to use them when you have a little bit of a deficiency at your quarterback position.
In Vancouver, they've opened up the some upper bowl seats for this game. They're looking for a pretty good crowd Saturday at BC Place. Taquan Mizell was back at practice this week, kind of splitting reps with running back Sean Shivers, who made his CFL debut a couple weeks ago against Montreal. He had 14 carries for 63 yards with a rushing touchdown, but he also added 2 catches for 73 yards. So Shivers is a pretty good weapon in the backfield for those BC Lions. I'm sure they're going to be looking forward to using him this week. I know Dom Rhymes was sitting out practice on Wednesday. They expect him to be available against Saskatchewan, but they look pretty healthy right now. It's just Vernon Adams Jr. establishing some consistency. He threw the 6 picks against Toronto, and then he opened the next game against Montreal with an interception. They got called back on a penalty. I feel like if that one stood, maybe things could spiral for him a little bit here. So I don't know if the Riders can rely on another Nick Marshall game sealing interception, but it feels like if they're going to win, that's what it's going to take on Saturday in BC to force Vernon Adams Jr. to make mistakes.
Yeah, it's going to take that, and it's going to take Save on Foods giving away $1 million because we're going to need a couple returns from Alfred, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of kickoffs from BC in this game.
When that's true, when your special teams is your best offensive player.
Wouldn't it be nice if you could get points for that?
Yeah, it's too bad when they only count as a touchdown. That's very frustrating. I think the return game is one of the most exciting things we still have in the CFL. We should celebrate it on fantasy, and we should celebrate it anytime we can. Mario Alford, I think he's scoring. I saw the stat. He's scoring a touchdown every 3.7 games or something like that. So if the averages play out, he's not going to score this week. That being said, it's really big for the Lions to limit him so Mason Fine doesn't have that favorable field position to work with, because Alfred he's a game changer. He could flip a field just like that and help out the offense, of course.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure BC's not gonna. They're gonna kick away from him too after a game like that. You just know that's. Hope maybe they can work on some reverses or something like you don't want to give away everything, but Craig Dickinson is a special teams guru, and the one thing that we haven't really seen from him, other than like a couple onside kicks, is like trickery when it comes to special teams. So now's the time where if we want to keep pace and we want to be able to lock in a playoff position, it's time for stuff like that to happen. I mean, we see some reverses. We should see some, fake punts. Corsack, he's a great punter, and there's been tons of times where like if you see that back view, like he could take off and run with it. And maybe they're saving that for the end of the season. I don't know, but it's time to start getting creative.
The Riders lead the league in punt return average, nearly 15 yards a punt. The BC Lions on cover teams, they're giving up almost 12 yards a punt. They're better than they were last year. It was an area of struggle, cover teams for the Lions. So you know that they're going to be focused on Mario Alford this Saturday.
It's also crazy that Mario Alford has already broken the Riders' return touchdown record.
That is crazy.
It's amazing, but it's crazy.
He just came last year, right? Or was it? Yeah. Wow.
19 games, I believe he's played. 19 games, and he beat the record. In 100 and how long has the Riders been around?
The long, rich history of Rider returners. Sunday is probably the most intriguing game right now. Of course, last week, looking on the surface, it's like, yeah. And then, it hit the fan. Calgary's only 4-point favorites over the Ottawa RedBlacks here, as Dustin Crum will lead his team into Cowtown. The big thing is, can the Stamps stop Crum from rumbling and running all over them? They called it last week the Crum back, and they they actually released shirts and everything, but he has 201 yards rushing in 2 games this year. What do? They put Awe on him. I don't know if that's a good situation for the RedBlacks. You don't want that middle linebacker all over your starting quarterback every play. But that has to be what the Stamps are going to try to do on defense on Sunday.
Yeah, but if you have a guy spying your quarterback, that's a guy who's not dropping back into coverage. So, and Kahari Jones is somebody who would be able to, I think, use that to his advantage, perhaps. So, last week, Red Black fans of 2 and Out, your boy did it. So here we go again. So you're welcome, Andrea and Vince and all those other people. You're welcome.
The good luck charm.
Yeah, good luck charm.
Yeah, I love that. Now, thanks to Vince for reminding us that it's Baron Miles, the DC for Ottawa, instead of Noel Thorpe. And he's got his hands full this week as well. The Stamps had their best offensive game of the year last week. against Saskatchewan. Ottawa's defense has been keeping them in games. They've been forcing turnovers. They've been really hard on offenses. So Jake Maier has a tall task ahead of him this week against the Red Blacks unit.
He does, and honestly, like Jake Maier missed a lot of passes last week too when he had wide open receivers. So it could have been a lot worse had he been a little bit more accurate.
Mm-hmm.
The jury's still out on Jake Maier. Like I don't think any of us have seen anything yet to really fully cement himself that he was that much better than Bo to move on from. So he's got to keep improving if he's gonna keep his job there. I think Ottawa's defense has been playing better than Saskatchewan's defense, especially without Milligan. And so I think Calgary's in a tougher spot when it comes to their offensive versus Ottawa's defense.
And while BC is number one in several defensive categories, Ottawa's number two in points against. They're number two in offensive points against. They're number two in touchdowns given up. They've only given up 9, but 8 were offensive touchdowns. They're number one against the run, 3.6 yards a carry is what they're averaging here. So Dedrick Mills, I think, has been a bit of a strength for the Stampeders. He was not really too involved against Saskatchewan. So it's going to be another tough week to get him involved against the RedBlacks, who have been tough against the run, and they're going to be giving Jake Maier some fits. Although last week, it just kind of seemed with Mark and Michelle back, him getting some attention. Reggie Bagleton was those probably just blown coverages, but to let the veteran receiver in that receiving core just be left that wide open, I can't see Ottawa allowing that to happen Sunday at McMahon Stadium. But I mean, a bit of a blow for the Stampeders here, because Luther Hakanavanu was in a walking boot Wednesday at practice. Dave Dickinson claiming that he'll be okay. Luther had a couple big plays against Saskatchewan. He's a big receiver that can make things happen. Now, Tommy Lee Lewis had the touchdown in his first catch in his first game against the Riders. Also had the called back punt return as well off the illegal block. He missed practice on Wednesday too. So those are a couple guys that the Stamps don't want to be without. Once they, start to get the offense rolling and then guys get hurt, it's like, oh, here we go again. But it does appear Josh Coker was back at practice on the offensive line this week, and he's on the 6th game, so probably going to return next week, but a good sign for the Stampeders that he is back practicing. But the Stamps, they're another young team, and they struggle with injuries as well, especially in that receiving core. And if they're going to have some more changes there, Jake is going to be in tough this week against Ottawa. But that being said, Crum needs to have more going than just the rushing game.
For
and
sure. Yeah.
That's really all he had going against Winnipeg, right? They missed a couple big plays themselves. They need to get those receivers going at least a little bit.
Yeah, but the good thing here is that Ottawa knows that Calgary is going to be focusing on that. So now is the time to, that you have that skill. Now's the time this week in practice to work on those crossing routes or work on those curls or just play action to get Calgary and those very strong defensive players to pin their ears back and just kind of bite on all those running fakes.
RedBlacks started to have some veterans get back to practice this week as well. Shaq Evans back practicing after the hand injury, and Jovan Santos Knox, the linebacker, back practicing as well. These guys probably not going to play against Calgary, but the RedBlacks getting healthy and getting some good veteran pieces back in their lineup in the near future as well. And that being said, just anecdotally, it just seems like The RedBlacks always play the Stamps tough. They
Yeah.
always give them fits. So, yeah, they've got a chance to go into McMahon Stadium and leave with a win here. And if they do, I just kind of look at the landscape that has been going on in the East Division, where the RedBlacks could move to 500. Then all of a sudden, they're second, right behind the Argos. And that's contingent, of course, on the Argos beating the Ticats as well. But so far this year, thanks to Edmonton, the East has a better record than the West. And right now, a better interdivisional record, which, if that holds, look, we got a long way to go. I don't think that's happened since 2015, where the East was better against the West than vice versa. So 2023 has been just another one of those wacky years in the CFL, and that's why we all love this league, man.
Yeah, like I think like anyone can really say that Toronto's the only team in the East that's actually like really performed like we kind of thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think Montreal has looked a little better than people thought they would at certain points. Hamilton has obviously looked a lot worse than people thought, and I think Ottawa a little bit better-ish, and especially in this past couple games, I guess. But yeah, it's it. I think parity is kind of back in the CFL here. It looks like because like we talked about before, Winnipeg are not the juggernauts that they used to be. It seems,
Yeah.
and while BC looked like dominant, they also looked terrible one game. And again, Vernon Adams just had a bad game, but a lot of people say that that's the real Vernon Adams. So we'll have to see as the rest of the league goes on.
I just hope
what
it's
he's going to do.
not a mirage for the RedBlacks. Like they get that win over
Yeah.
the Bombers,
Yeah.
and then build
Well,
off
no,
of
like,
that. Build off of
But
that.
they have the defense, and defense wins championships, right?
Yeah.
And they've been very unlucky at the quarterback position with Mazzoli having these two injuries, and it's just if they can put it all together, and like we've talked about before, they have like a really good, solid young coaching staff, and it seems to be working. The players want to play for them. Obviously, Bob Dice is a guy that I'm sure a lot of players want to run through a wall for, and Kahari and Barron. Like it's good stuff there.
What's your fantasy lineup looking like?
Well, I'm rolling the dice on the value quarterback Crum pick.
Yeah.
Hopefully he doesn't just get crumpet.
Here we go.
My captain. I'm sticking with AJ Ouellette as my captain. I got Brady Oliveira. I got Nick Dembski. Taking a flyer on Picton because I think him and Fine I think have a little bit of a chemistry from their times working on the second team there. So I'm hoping he has a good game. And then for my flex, I got touchdown Drew Woltarski, and defense we're going with Toronto.
All right. In the CFL Podcast Fantasy League, I've got Trey from the Canadian Football Countdown. My lineup, I've got the top three are the same as you, man. Chad Kelly, AJ Ouellette, Brady Oliveira. I got Mark and Michelle from the Stampeders, Lucky Whitehead of the Lions, and Sean Shivers of the Lions in my flex. $5,000 if they're going to give him the ball 14 times like they did against Montreal. I'd be a happy camper, and I'm gonna roll with that Argonaut defense as well. For Pick'em this week, yeah, we're the same: Bombers, Argos, Lions, and Stampeders. How confident are you?
My heart. This is my heart. But I'm using my head this week.
Yeah, that's usually. I've been doing terrible on Pick'em, so I might as well just go opposite.
Yeah, well, at least you're doing okay on fantasy.
Hey, did you see Chris O'Leary, one of the writers, CFL.ca, rolled with Edmonton?
I did see that.
That's the Hail Mary.
I did see that.
I love it. I love the ballsiness.
Yeah.
You can
They're willing to take a loss is just impressive.
You can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out on your favorite podcatcher. You can check us out on YouTube as well, liking and leaving a comment there. A lot of people were pretty jacked after week 6. Week 7's got a lot to live up to. I'm okay with having a breather and it not being as good as last week. I don't know if my heart rate can handle that anymore. Maybe I should just switch to more whole foods or something like that. But
no. 7-Eleven chicken for that.
You can support Two and Out on Patreon as well. You get the show earlier than anyone else. Thank you for your support. Thanks, Sheldon, for coming on and being here when Brazilian Tie can't be. And we will talk to you on Monday. Wrapping up week 7. Brazilian Tie will be back. You have a good one and enjoy this week of CFL football.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.